Okay, hi everyone. So today it's starting lesson 7 of attachment. I've actually titled this lesson 7A because I'm going to deliver types of attachment in two parts. We're going to start off today with just the AO1, so that's just the description, just the outline, the key terms, all of that kind of thing. And then next lesson, I'll do lesson 7B, which will just be the AO3 of types of attachment. So that'll be all the evaluation, all the peel paragraphs, everyone's favourite, all of that sort of stuff. So that's why it'll be 7A and 7B. So previously in attachment, so lesson 6, and lesson 5 as well, we were looking at the explanations of attachments, so sort of how attachments start, why do they form, all of that sort of thing. But today we're going to be looking at the types, so that's more kind of descriptive than explanatory. And to look at that, we're going to be focusing on the work of a really influential psychologist in attachment called Mary Ainsworth. She is also named on the spec as well, so we're going to get to know her and who she is in a second, and her famous study on attachment called The Strange Situation. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in today's lesson. So Mary Ainsworth, the way in which she kind of fits into the attachment topic is that she was actually a student of John Bowlby's. So she was a PhD student and was completing her PhD under the sort of watchful eye of John Bowlby. So we know John Bowlby from his monotropic theory, which was last lesson, and he also comes up again later on. So her work was greatly influenced by Bowlby. However, instead of looking at the explanations like Bowlby was focusing on, Mary Ainsworth was more focused on investigating types of attachment. So her research has been really kind of influential, and it's still today used, a really widely used method in establishing attachment types in infants, and that is her strange situation study. So whenever a child is kind of sent for testing on attachment, more often than not, they will be conducting the strange situation with this baby. So a little recap before we get into it, because a lot of this stuff links together with Ainsworth's work. So again, just a little definition of attachment there. The strong emotional and reciprocal bond between an infant and their caregiver, which develops through interaction. So the interactions themselves was what Ainsworth was looking at, and it was to establish what sort of type of attachment they looked like they had with their primary caregiver. So in this case, it was the mother. And the sorts of behaviours that Ainsworth was looking out for, things like stranger anxiety and separation anxiety, those attachment behaviours were highlighted to us by Shaffer and Emerson towards the start of the topic. So stranger anxiety, looking at what the baby's reactions are when there's a stranger in the room, and then separation anxiety, so looking at whether they're distressed or not when the mother is separated from the child as well. So all of that sort of thing is going on during the strange situation. So the main aim of the study was, as I mentioned, to identify the attachment type, and this was kind of categorized into secure or insecure, but there are actually three distinctive broad types or categories here. So from the actual study, which we're going to look at in a second, Ainsworth concluded that there seemed to be three different types or categories of attachment. So you've got type A, which is insecure avoidant. The way I remember that is just avoidant, begins with A, so that's type A. Type B is secure attachment. This tends to be the most common sort of form of attachment and probably the most desirable type as well. And then you've got lastly type C, which is known as insecure resistant or insecure ambivalent. That tends to be the least common attachment type. So the actual study itself, it is a structured observation. It does get really easily confused with an experiment, but it is an observation. That basically means it's set up, and then the observers, so Ainsworth and other researchers, will watch what's happening, and then they will tally and record behavioural categories, as opposed to being an IV and a DV. It will just be a sort of, they'll set up a thing, they might manipulate some things, and then they record what's happening in terms of the behaviours. The participants are 12 to 18-month-old babies. The reason for this particular age is due to Bowlby's work on the critical period. So they tried to plan so that at this point in the child's life, they should be during that kind of critical period where they are building an attachment. So it kind of makes sense that if they're observing their attachment, they should already kind of have one, because they need to have one to be able to say what type of attachment they have. So that's why they kind of used 12 to 18-month-olds. And so the babies and their mothers were observed with a video camera, and also through like a one-way mirror in a purpose-built playroom. So the procedure consists of several different episodes, and each episode lasts approximately 5 minutes, but sort of anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes long. And then the mother will kind of be given various cues to leave and come back, and a stranger would enter and leave at the room at different times as well. And this is basically just so that the observers can watch how the baby reacts and their attachment behaviours through the one-way mirror. So instead of describing to you the strange situation study, it's easier if you guys go and have a little look. So if you go to YouTube and you type it, you have to type it kind of exactly, otherwise it comes up with the wrong links. But if you type in the strange situation Mary Ainsworth, it is the first link. And then what I would like you to do after you've watched that first video is, on a blank piece of paper, just a scrap piece of paper, you can throw it away afterwards, is just to jot down when you think the different episodes are occurring. So kind of try and figure out how many different episodes there are, and also note down any kind of key or standout behaviours that you think they're looking for during the different episodes. So see how many you can find and what sort of things are happening during those different episodes. Once you have done that, I want you to watch a second video, and you have to type in strange situation MP4 to get that one. A bit random, but that's just the one that makes it come up, and it's the first link. So then have a little watch of that one. So you could pause this video now and exit and go and have a look at those. Okay, so really well done if you got 8 episodes. You might have got 7 or maybe even 6, because some of them aren't as obvious as others, but there are technically 8 different episodes of The Strange Situation. So the first episode is purely just the mother, the baby, and the observer. This is more not really a proper episode. It's more about the observer sort of explaining and telling the mother what's going to be happening, almost like the brief. So that only really lasts 30 seconds. The experimenter will just tell the mother what's going on. Episode 2, you've got the mother and the baby present, and they will just be those two playing in the purpose-built playroom for about 3 to 5 minutes. And then the next episode, a stranger will be given a cue to enter the room, and the mother and the baby will still be in there. So it'll be the stranger, the mother, and the baby, and they are in there for 3 to 5 minutes. The mother will then be given a cue to leave, and it is just the stranger left alone with the baby for 3 to 5 minutes. So at that point, they'll be looking at some sort of stranger anxiety type behaviours, and also some separation anxiety. Episode 5, the stranger leaves and the mother returns. So again, they'll be interested in seeing what the baby does there. Then the mother leaves again, so it's just the baby, again looking at some separation anxiety. Then the stranger comes back in, so it's just the stranger and the baby again then. And then lastly, the stranger leaves and the mother returns. So it's just the mother and the baby again at the end. So as you can see, lots and lots of interesting manipulations and interesting episodes going on, and loads of opportunities there for the observers to kind of note down real key behaviours that the infants are displaying, and those behaviours are what gives them the sort of clues as to what type of attachment out of those three types I described earlier the baby will be. So these are the sort of key behaviours that they would be noting down and that they'd be tallying on their sort of checklist of behaviours during those different episodes. So the first sort of behaviour that I'll be interested in is something called secure base behaviour. This tends to be evident to be taking place when the baby is sort of using the mother as like a base camp. So that's what it means by secure base. So it might be that the baby goes to explore a little bit, but then gets a little bit unsure and returns back to the mother. So they're sort of using the mother as their kind of safe zone type thing. Another behaviour that they'll be looking for is separation anxiety. So we already know about that. So when the mother leaves, if they get anxious or upset or distressed. Stranger anxiety as well. So when the stranger enters the room, they'll be looking at how the baby reacts. And then lastly, this is the most important behaviour, and the reason for this is because it's the one behaviour that differs between the three types. So it's the one that sort of separates the three types, because the other three behaviours can also be present in all three types. So, but the reunion is very kind of distinctive. So this is when the mother returns. How does the baby react? Okay, so the findings then, the children were classified into three broad types after the results of their behaviours that they displayed during this strange situation. So this is what I talked about before. So you've got secure, which is type B, insecure avoidant type A, insecure resistant type C, and these were the percentages of babies so they only tested American infants, but we'll come to that with the second part when we look at the AO3, because that's a bit of an evaluative point there, the fact that they only actually used American babies in the original research. They found that 70% of the babies were found to be securely attached, 20% was insecure avoidant, and only 10% came back as insecure resistant. These next few slides are just a little bit more detail about the sorts of behaviours that are typically displayed in the strange situation by each of the three types. So type A, insecure avoidant, so this was the 20% of the babies. These are the sorts of things that they showed. So they didn't really, they weren't really affected too much about whether the mother was there or not. So not too much separation anxiety. They were a little bit distressed when separated from the mother, but not much. When the stranger enters, they rejected sort of comfort from the stranger, so they didn't really want to talk to the stranger or interact with the stranger. When the mother returned, so this was the reunion behaviour, they avoided the mother, hence why it comes from the name, the insecure avoidance. So the mother would kind of go to pick them up and they would sort of avoid eye contact. They would almost act a little bit sad, a little bit grumpy, or a bit solemn, a kind of a little bit, not really showing any kind of emotion typically. And the sorts of things that they would have was like an internal working model, which we looked at last lesson from Bowlby. They will kind of not be very happy and low self-esteem, and a bit sad really. Type B, secure attachment, the sorts of things that these babies showed were they were using the mother quite a lot as the safe base. So using her as like a really good base there to come back to. They were wary of the stranger, but still happy to play while the mother was still there, so they still felt comfortable when the mother was there. When the mother left, they were extremely distressed, so they weren't happy, so lots of separation anxiety. But then when the mother returned, so the reunion behaviour in this case is completely different. So when the mother returned, instead of being like sad or upset, they were happy. So the mother returns and they're like, oh, it's like a relief that the mother has come back to them. And so they will have a positive internal working model where they're trusting and they feel loved and they feel safe and secure in the knowledge that the mother was going to come back for them and that they trust them, and that everything was happy in the end. So that was 70%, so the most common. Lastly, then you've got the least common. So this was only 10% of babies, and this was the insecure resistant. So the sorts of behaviours that this type of baby will show is fussy, very clingy, wary of the stranger even when the mother is there. So a little bit kind of a bit weird about why the stranger's there, who are they, what are they doing in here. Very distressed when the mother leaves. So this behaviour could be easily mistaken at this point for secure because they're distressed when the mother leaves. However, the main difference being upon reunion, they were very complicated behaviours here. So the mother would go to console them upon her return, but the baby would appear really angry and very resistant. So again, that's why it's insecure resistant, very resistant of their love from the mother, and they're very conflicting. So they're not sure if they want the mother to be there or they want her to go. They're very upset. They can't calm down. They'll sort of want to be picked up, and then as soon as the mother picks them up, they might struggle, like they want to get down again. And this type of baby tends to have a very negative internal working model and a very negative self-image and attention seeking, and it's very untrusting relationships, a very insecure type of attachment for that one. So what I would like you to do, I think this is the last thing, oh no, yeah, okay, so a couple of things. So what I would like you to do as a task is on a blank piece of A4, I want you to section the paper into 8 different squares to represent the 8 different episodes of the strange situation, and I want you to draw like a comic book strip, one picture for each of the episodes to sort of highlight what's going on, and then also like a little speech box underneath each one. So sort of here you draw a little picture of the mother and the baby and the observer just chatting, and underneath here you'd put observer explains the procedure of what's going to happen, 30 seconds long, and then you do the same for that one and the same for that one. So make sure you describe what's happening in each of the episodes. That should take you, if you do it properly, probably somewhere between half an hour and 45 minutes if you're putting a lot of effort and creativity into it. You can do it digitally if you want and upload it, but you can also do it handwritten, obviously hand-drawn, and then take a picture to upload it to when I open up the assignment on Teams. This is the final thing. So once you've done all of that, I want you to avoid going back over the video to kind of help you. This is more to see what you can remember from today. So who conducted the strange situation? What was the aim of the strange situation? What research method was used? How many episodes were there? What were the 4 broad behaviours the researchers were interested in or looking out for? What was the most important one and why? And what were the 3 attachment types that were identified as a result of the strange situation research? Okay, next lesson we'll start to look at the AO3, but because obviously I'm aware that that was quite long and there's quite a few little tasks for you to do in there, that's why I decided to break it down into AO1 and AO3 into 2 lessons. Okay, so that's all there is for lesson 7A, Types of Attachment, The Strange Situation by Ainsworth.